गुड मॉर्निंग पराग सर.
गुड मॉर्निंग सर. गुड मॉर्निंग.
तरुण सरांशी काल झालं संध्याकाळी बोलणं. सो मे बी ही मे जॉईन बाय अराउंड 8:55.
ओके, नो प्रॉब्लेम. माझाही काल संध्याकाळी बोललोय मी, काही प्रॉब्लेम नाही.
ओके, ठीक आहे सर. समीरला मी आता विचारतो, जर तो लवकर जॉईन इन झाला तर ही वॉन्ट्स टू मेक सम अनाउन्समेंट ऑफ ब्रांच प्रोग्राम्स. तर आधी त्यांचं करून घेऊ आणि मग देन आय विल इन्व्हाइट यू फॉर द इंट्रोडक्शन.
हो ठीक आहे, चालेल.
मी समीरशी बोलून घेतो इन द मीन टाइम. तो आता अनाउन्समेंट करणार आहे का नंतर करतोय ते?
हो, अगदी अगदी, काही प्रॉब्लेम नाही.
ओके सर, या चलो.
ओके.
Good morning all. Today we have our first session for which is on GST funds, and we have our beloved speaker CA Tarun Arora from Delhi to speak on the same. Now I invite CA Parag Paranjpe to give introduction of our today's speaker. Over to you, Parag.
Yes, good morning and thank you, Sachin sir. Welcome Tarunji and welcome all the participants of Sarsbagh CP Study Circle. I welcome you all on behalf of Sarsbagh CP Study Circle. Today we are going to, today CA Tarun Arora ji is going to talk on GST audits, which is a very important topic. I will just introduce Tarunji. He is a student of GST and researching on subject since 2015. He has qualified as a CA in 2011. He is a partner in Singh Saini and Company, which has a standing of more than 27 years. Tarun Arora and Company was founded by Tarun Arora in 2012. The firm is well recognized in the field of GST and has assisted various medium and large scale entities in implementing and complying with GST with ease. Tarunji is a regular speaker at various forums such as certificate course on GST conducted by ICAI, CP seminar conducted by various branches of ICAI, He has also been invited by our CP Study Circle to talk about the rule 42 and 43. So everybody knows him very well, and he's a very good speaker. So I hand over today's session to Sri Tarunji. So Tarunji, please start the session today's. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I will please mute their mic. Good morning, everyone. At the outset, I would like to thank our CP Study Circle to give me this opportunity to share my view on the topic GST refunds. I would be very honest to say that GST refund is a topic in which the procedure or the law is not laid down in section 54 with rule 89, etc. But it is laid down through circular numbers such as 125 or other circulars. And now we will be starting the deliberation. So I would request kindly allow the option of screen sharing to me. Oh, it is allowed. Thank you. So I have divided the entire discussion in six broad categories. But before that, we all understand that under GST, whenever we talk about anything or any law for that matter, Act is the main source. Act is the guiding force. Act is the vision, and rules are governed through Act. So the provisions of GST refund, are contained in section 54 to 58 of the GST Act, and rules start from rule 89 to rule 97A, and now we have some additional rules also, read with some notification and circulars. Why I have brought this slide into the picture is that there are certain situations wherein we will see that the rules have gone beyond the Act. Rules have superseded the provisions of the Act. They have laid down those provisions which are not contained in the Act, and we will discuss those provisions when we will be discussing the relevant provisions. So we will be discussing the entire topic in 6 broad categories. First will be the various types of refunds under GST. How many types of refunds the application can be filed? What are the various ingredients of those refund applications? 2, what is the due date of filing of the refund application? Thirdly, what exactly is the return filing process? 4th, what is the scope of refund amount? 5, what are the documents that are to be submitted with the refund application? And lastly, other miscellaneous issues. So these are the 6 broad categories that we will be taking up. I request if any one of you have any queries, they can just post it out in the comment section, and we will take up at the end of, say, mid or at the end of the session as we feel it is relevant. Starting on with the various types of refunds. So various types of refunds have not been categorically defined anywhere in the GST Act. किसी भी sections के अंदर specifically नहीं लिखा कि ये सारे तरीके के refunds हैं. But there are the interpretation is derived from the meaning part, the definition of the refund, the term refund as provided in explanation to section 54. It says that refund includes, so it is an inclusive definition. Refund includes refund of tax paid on zero-rated supplies of goods or services. So if I am exporting goods, I am exporting services, I am supplying to SCB. Sorry.
Tarun sir, sorry to interrupt you. Your PowerPoint activation has failed. So if you could just stop sharing the screen and again share it, it would start.
I am doing it.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you, sir.
Kindly confirm whether it is working now.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. So we were on to the issue, what is refund? So the term is defined as an explanation to section 54 to mean refund includes. So it is an inclusive definition. It includes refund of tax paid on zero-rated supplies of goods or services. So if I'm exporting goods, I'm exporting services, I am supplying goods to an SEZ, I am supplying services to an SEZ unit or an SEZ developer. On payment of taxes, I'm not exercising the option of LUT. Then I pay the taxes. When I pay the taxes on zero rated supplies, I'm eligible for refund. That is included in the definition of refund. Or if I am exercising the option of LUT, then I am eligible for input tax credit on inputs and input services. Then I am eligible to take the refund of inputs and input services used in making those zero rated supplies. Then if I am paying taxes on deemed exports, then also it is eligible to me as refund. And lastly, in section 54.3, there are two categories wherein I am eligible for ITC refund. One is in relation to zero rated suppliers, and the second one is in relation to inverted duty structure. So four categories have been explicitly defined. That is zero rated with payment, zero rated without payment, deemed exports, and lastly 54.3, which is directly or indirectly covering inverted duty structure. So four categories have been categorically defined or have been specifically included in the refund definition. Now the issue arises, what exactly does it mean? What is the basic meaning of refund? जो इंक्लूजन पोर्शन है वो तो एडिशनल अमाउंट्स हमने जो ऐड कर दिए कि these are also available to you as refund. But what is the basic meaning? What are the basic items that are already included in the refund law? For example, I was required to pay a tax of rupees 1,000 rupees, but mistakenly or by mistake I paid, instead of 1,000 I paid 10,000, or instead of 10,000 I paid 1 lakh rupees. So there is an excess payment of tax which was never required under any of the law or any of the provisions of the act. I was required to pay only 1,000, I paid 10,000. Then that 9,000 which I have paid in excess is eligible to me as a refund. Two, there is an amount like in my cash ledger. For example, I was required to pay 1,000 rupees. I paid, while calculating my tax amount, instead of 1,000, I paid the challan for 10,000 rupees. I paid the land for 10,000 rupees. The amount is now lying in my cash ledger. I identified the mistake, and while filing GSTR 3B, I corrected the mistake and I paid only 1,000 rupees. So 9,000 was still lying in my cash ledger. The difference between the two categories, excess payment and amount lying in cash ledger. Excess payment means when I have debited the account, मैंने अपने cash ledger से amount debit करके actual liability में pay किया. I have debited the amount from cash ledger and adjusted it against liability, a fictitious liability, a liability which never existed. Where there could be a situation wherein I have paid the amount is lying in my cash ledger, but I have not yet utilized it, so that amount can also be claimed as a refund. Two cases where refund voucher is issued. I received an advance for say GST audit for 2021. I received 1 lakh rupees as GST, 18,000 rupees, and suddenly government announced that for 2021 no GST audit is required. So I have to refund the amount. So when I am refunding that amount to the actual recipient, then I will be paying him 1 lakh rupees and 18,000 rupees. The law says that for that 18,000 you have to issue a refund voucher, and you should claim the refund of that amount because those services were never provided. The supply never took place, and since the supply never took place, the amount was never required to be paid to the government. So it is eligible to me as a refund. Lastly,
Tarun
I
sir,
was required to pay CGST and SGST, but I paid IGST.
Tarun sir, sorry to interrupt you. Your voice is breaking continuously, sir, since the start. And your screen is also not changing. Means, have you been changing the slide? We are on one slide only from the start. No, it's on meaning of refund. We are on one slide only from the start, and your voice is also continuously breaking, sir.
Now I've brought into the normal screen. This is my meaning of refund slide. Whether all these were coming or not, or it was just that first paragraph.
We are unable to hear you, sir. The voice is breaking. वॉइस ब्रेक हो रहा है सर कंटिन्यूअसली आपका, और स्क्रीन भी आगे नहीं जा रहा है.
I'm just checking what is the problem. And now please let me know whether it is
नहीं सर.
just give me a second. I will bring my headphones so that it is.
Yeah, that would be better, sir. Yeah.
That what is the meaning of refund? So we have seen that meaning of refund is divided in 4 broad categories, or there are 4 inclusions to the refund definition. That was refund on account of zero rated supplies with payment of taxes, refund on account of zero rated supplies without payment of taxes. Then we had on deemed exports, and then on inverted duty structure. And when we discuss these 4 inclusions, we also discuss that there are certain refunds which are already included in the definition itself. For example, excess payment, wrong payment, amount lying in cash ledger. So these were the broad categories that are already available to me as now. If I see the entire crux, if I see the entire refund mechanism, there are 3 types of that are actually available to me, or 3 broad categories. I can divide these refunds in 3 broad categories. The first is the payment of taxes, wherein I have paid the taxes. When I use the term tax paid or payment of taxes, it means the amount has been paid through GSTR 3B. So first set of refunds will be wherein I have paid the taxes through GSTR 3B. And when I say that I have paid the taxes through GSTR 3B, in total there can be 6 types of refunds under that category, wherein the amount is debited from my GSTR 3B, or the I have paid the amount to my GSTR 3B. 4 of those categories are very simple. Export with payment of taxes in case of goods, exports with payment of taxes for goods, exports with payment of taxes of services, SEZ supplies of goods or services deemed exports. In all these 4 categories, I pay the amount through GSTR 3B and then I file a refund application. And in case of goods, the shipping bill itself becomes my refund application. Apart from this, wherein I make a wrong payment of taxes or I make an excess payment of taxes, then all categories are covered under the limb of tax paid. That is, I have paid the taxes and those taxes are now eligible to me as refund, because either they are excess payment, wrong payment, or otherwise eligible to me as refund under the various provisions of the act. The second limb is in relation to input tax credits. And when I talk about input tax credit, then again we have 3 broad categories. One is again zero rated supply. So I can get refund against zero rated supply of goods or services. That is both for goods. Oh, that is both for exports and SEZ. Second is inverted duty structure. And lastly, deemed exports. Even in case of deemed exports, I am eligible for refund. In case of deemed export, the provision says that I am eligible for refund as a supplier or as a recipient. So I can claim the refund either as a supplier or as a recipient. For example, I supplied certain goods to an EOU that is deemed to be a deemed export. In that case, I have an option to claim the refund, or the EOU, the entity which has received that amount, even that can claim the refund. So it is between the 2 parties who decide that which will claim the refund, and the party which agrees to file the refund application, the other party will have to give a certificate that they will not claim the refund. And lastly, we have other categories of refund. It could be in relation to that amount is lying in my cash ledger. The amount is still lying in my cash ledger. It has never been paid to the department through GSTR 3B. That it means it has never been paid as tax. It is still my asset which is lying as an amount in the cash ledger. Or I am eligible for refund on account of certain appeal, or I have an assessment that was going on, I deposited under protest, or any other case wherein there is another judgment there is a matter which has been decided, and in that matter the amount has become eligible to me. And lastly, a residual category, any other category. If my refund does not fall in any of the categories which we have discussed, then I can file the refund application under the category others. So in total, there are 13 different options available to me in which a refund application can be filed. Out of those 13 application, 13 methods or 13 options, the first option or the first nature of refund that we discussed, that was exports with payment of taxes of goods. Exports with payment of taxes of goods. In that particular case, we are not required to file any refund application. Exports with payment of taxes, I am not required to file any refund application. My shipping bill in itself becomes a refund application, and that is the end of it. I just have to make sure my GSTR1 is correctly filed, my GSTR3B is correctly filed, shipping bill has already been filed, my air carrier or shipping carrier, whichever is taking the goods, they are filing their EGM. Once these are all satisfied, the refunds are automatic and we are not required to do any further compliance or any other work on that particular fund application. The second major aspect is, so the first part of our discussion, that was what are the categories of refund application. So we have discussed there are 13 different types of refunds that can be filed. Now the second issue arises, what is the due date of filing of the refund application? The due date of filing of the application is very simple. It is 2 years from the end of the relevant date. So I am eligible to claim the refund under different categories within 2 years from the relevant date. And now when we understand the meaning of relevant date, it is different for all the different category refund. So we have discussed there are 13 different types of refund application. There are 13 different types of refund application. So for those 13 different categories, we have separate relevant dates. Starting on with, I have made export of goods. I have made export of goods, whether with pay or without pay. So if I have made export of goods, my relevant date will be the date when the goods leave India. When the goods leave India, when they cross the custom frontiers, from that particular date till 2 years, I have the time to file my refund application. Now, whether it is by sea or by air, by land, by post, whatever the case may be. What is important is when they are crossing the custom frontiers, when they are going beyond the boundaries of India. The second category was, this was export of goods. Now it is export of services. In export of services, what is different is that there can be two options. I have received an advance. I have received an advance. So in that particular situation, they say that if you have received advance, then as soon as you complete your supply, जैसे ही आप अपनी supply complete कर दोगे, you will be issuing the invoice. Then 2 years will be counted from the date of issue of invoice. Yani when you receive an advance, the date will be calculated after the completion of service. And in the second way around, where the invoice is first issued, and the payment is received afterward, 2 years will be calculated from the date of receipt of payment. So in simple words, what we can conclude is that in case of services, it is, if advance is received, then from the date of issue of invoice, and if invoice is issued first, then the date of receipt of payment. So whichever is later, that is the criteria for export of services. Then the third major category was wherein there is an excess payment of tax, wrong payment of tax on all these categories. In those particular situations, the relevant date is to be calculated from the actual date of payment. When I actually pay the amount to the department, that is the date from which 2 years will be calculated. Again, there are various other categories, various other dates for which specific explanation have been provided in the law, and that is part of the PPT that has already been sent to you. I am not devoting my time on that because it is very procedural, that what is the relevant date. Now moving on to the most important aspect of the refund filing process. What is exactly the refund filing process? So when I say that refund filing process is the most important aspect, it is because the entire criteria, how the department will start, how we will start, how the notices will be exchanged, how the show cause notice will be exchanged, everything is governed through this process. And once this process is completed, only then I will be eligible for refund. So in the first place, I file a refund application. In the first place, I file a refund application in form RFD01. So that is the first step. जब मैं RFD01 के अंदर application file करता हूँ, after filing the application, that application is forwarded to the proper officer. वो application proper officer को forward हो जाती है, and now that proper officer has to decide whether the application is complete or not. I'm not saying whether the refund is eligible or not. I'm saying whether the application is complete or not. Completion of an application means whether all the documents, supported document as required under the law are attached to that application or not. That's it. The proper officer is restricted only to this criteria, that whether the refund application is complete or not. If the refund application is complete, he has to issue an acknowledgement in RFD02. So what I am saying is that first is I will file the refund application. The proper officer will receive an application. The second step is proper officer has to see whether the application is complete or not, whether all the required documents are attached to that application or not. Once all the documents are attached, he will issue an acknowledgement. And if he finds that two documents are not attached, an affidavit is not attached, or the documents attached are not clearly visible, then he will issue a deficiency memo. So there are only two options available to the officer: either issue the acknowledgement or issue the deficiency memo. If he has issued the acknowledgement, then the further process will start. If he has issued the acknowledgement, then the further process will start. But assuming that there was a deficiency, and he quoted that two documents are not attached, he issued the deficiency memo. I received the deficiency memo, and the form in which I will receive is RFD03. So I received the deficiency memo. As soon as I receive the deficiency memo is issued, my application is deemed to be concluded. It is now waste. I will have to file a fresh refund application. Once a deficiency memo is issued, the original application is defunct. It is of no use. Now I will have to refile the refund application. I will have to attach all the documents again, and again it will go to the proper officer. He will again see whether the application is complete or not. If it is complete, he will issue the acknowledgement in RFD02. And if the acknowledgement is application is missing some document, again a deficiency memo can be issued. So until and unless an acknowledgement has been issued, I will have to again file RFD01. He will issue DM. I will file RFD01. He will issue RFD03. The only important thing over here is that at this stage, the proper officer is only here to see whether the application is complete in all sense or not. It should not be that the refund is not eligible. In one of our cases, what was happening was he was saying that this refund is not eligible. So I visited the department. It was my other CA who was visiting the department, and he was trying to explain the officer that you have to issue an acknowledgement at this stage because my refund application is complete. Whether you accept the refund or you do not accept the refund, that is the further process. But at this juncture, when I have filed RFD01, you cannot issue deficiency memo stating that the refund is not eligible. You have to issue the acknowledgement. And even I had to visit the department to make them explain that this is not the way the law has to be interpreted. At this point, you cannot decide the eligibility of refund. At this point, you only have to decide whether the application is complete or not. So assuming my RFD02, my acknowledgement has been issued. Now what will happen is, assuming he's satisfied with the refund application, so he will issue me the refund order, and the order is issued in form RFD06. I am assuming that the refund application was complete in all sense. There was no ambiguity, there was no doubt. the proper officer accepted the refund application, so he will issue the refund order in RFD 06. After issuing the order in RFD 06, there can be two possibilities. For example, the amount was say 1 lakh rupees of refund. So either that amount was receivable by you, or there is an outstanding demand against which it is to be adjusted. So if the amount is to be credited in your account, he will issue a payment order. And if the amount has to be adjusted with your liability, then he will issue an adjustment advice. So RFD 05 is the payment order in which the amount will get back into your bank account, or it will be an adjustment with your existing liability, then he will be issuing RFD 07. Order will be issued in RFD 06. So whether it has to be paid or it has to be adjusted, that will depend whether the refund is actually granted or not. And the order to grant the refund is RFD 06. So this was a simple case. I filed a refund application, an acknowledgement was issued. The application was complete in all sense, the refund was granted, and the payment advice was also issued. But there could be a situation wherein there was some ambiguity in the refund application, or the proper officer wanted certain additional clarification. He wanted certain additional clarifications. So what he did was he issued a show cause notice. The proper officer issued a show cause notice, and I have to now reply against the show cause notice. So he issued the show cause notice why these credits should be allowed to you, or these credits are ineligible, or this is not the case of inverted duty structure, whatever the case may be. The application is not filed within 2 years from the relevant date, why I should grant the refund. So XYZ, the show cause notice can be issued on any ground that why this refund should be granted to you on the following grounds. Now I will have to reply against that show cause notice. And once I reply against that show cause notice, now the proper officer will redecide whether my reply is acceptable or not. If he finds it acceptable, he will issue the refund order. If he does not find it acceptable, he will issue the rejection order. And the rejection order or the refund order, both are issued in form RFD 06. That is the final product of my refund application is RFD 06. Whether it is in favor or it is in against, the final product will be RFD 06, and that will state whether the refund has been granted or the refund has been rejected. Now what we have understood is the process. First RFD 01, then RFD 02. Just a second, I will like to bring this on the slide so that I'm able to. The first step is I filed a refund application, then an acknowledgement was issued. In case deficiency memo was issued, so I will go back to deficiency memo. I will have to refile the refund application. Assuming acknowledgement was issued, I will proceed. If the proper officer accepts my application, he will issue the refund order. After refund order, either it is paid to me or it is adjusted. So accordingly, RFD 05 or RFD 07 will be issued. In case the proper officer has some ambiguities, he will issue, after acknowledgement, he will issue a show cause notice in RFD 08. Against that show cause notice, I will be filing a reply in RFD 09. And after understanding my reply, after taking into consideration my reply, he will either issue the refund order or he will reject the refund order. But both the issuance or rejection will come through RFD 06. So that is the main thing that we have to understand, is that issuance of RFD 06 does not mean that it is your refund amount has been sanctioned. Both rejection and completion have to be issued through RFD 06. Now let us go into the integrities of this process. This was an overview of the process. Now I'm getting into the integrities of this process. The first and the foremost part was I filed a refund application, and the proper officer now had to issue a deficiency memo or an acknowledgement. I have filed a refund application, and the proper officer now has to issue a deficiency memo or an acknowledgement. So the proper officer is given 15 days. The proper officer is given 15 days to issue either the acknowledgement or the deficiency memo. Within 15 days, he has to issue either the acknowledgement or the deficiency memo. After 16 days or the commencement of the 16 days, automatically a acknowledgement will be issued. On 16th day, automatically the system will generate an acknowledgement. And once the acknowledgement is issued, whether it is automatic or through the proper officer, again a DM cannot be issued or the application cannot be rejected on the grounds of incompletion of certain documents. In simple words, if I have filed a refund application within 15 days, either you issue the DM. If the deficiency memo is not issued, the system will automatically generate an acknowledgement. Or if you have yourself, the proper officer has himself generated the acknowledgement, then in both the situations, at any later stage, the proper officer cannot say, I will not give you the refund because the application is not complete. So he can demand the question, he can demand the additional document in RFD 08, that is the show cause notice, but he cannot reject the refund application merely on the basis of non-completion. So the 15 days limit is given to the proper officer to do the needful. Secondly, we have already discussed, once the deficiency memo is issued, I will have to refile my refund application so that it is taken. And the most important aspect, I filed a refund application, the officer issued a deficiency memo, I refiled the refund application. That refiled refund application should also be filed within 2 years of the relevant date. In simple words, the refund application for which acknowledgement is being issued, which will be taken up for the discussion purposes, should be filed within 2 years, not the original application. Though it is not correct, or it should not be this way, that for example, in one of our cases, the deficiency memo was issued 3 times, and that too on the last date, that is the 15th day of the refund application. So almost 50 days were wasted because the application was rejected, or the DM was issued on the 15th day. Then we again processed the application, we again filed, he again issued, and it was just a matter. We had a cushion of 60 days, and then and the last day we visited the department and convinced that this is not the way. After 5 days, our application, if you now issue the DM, it will be time barred. So you issue the acknowledgement, you reject the refund application, at least let us have an opportunity to fight the case at the appellate level. But do not reject the application as such on the basis of DM. Because if my application is not filed, then the department will take the stand that since you have not filed the application within 2 years, the refund is not eligible. So the most important aspect is that even after, once the DM is issued and I am filing the revised application, that revised application should also be filed within 2 years. Now there is an option of provisional refund. The normal process we have broadly discussed. There is also an option of provisional refund. So in provisional refund, what is done is, if I am exporting goods or I am exporting services, rather if I am giving zero rated supplies, I am doing zero rated supplies, then the law says that you are eligible for provisional refund. What if I am doing zero rated supply, whether of goods or of services, then I am eligible for provisional refund. And the provisional refund is granted within 7 days of issuance of acknowledgement. Provisional refund is granted within 7 days of issuance of acknowledgement. Otherwise, the time limit is 60 days. The refund has to be granted within 60 days. But for zero rated supplies, there is a provision in which provisional refund has to be granted within 7 days. Within 7 days, he has to issue the provisional refund. And the provisional refund amount is 90% of the total refund amount. So if I have claimed refund for say 5 lakh rupees, then 4,50,000 will be granted as provisional refund within 7 days. And finally, he will now take the course of issuing a refund order, adjustment order, payment order, whatever the cases may be. So provisional refund is the additional bonus available for zero rated supplies, and it is being done so that exporters do not feel the heat that their working capital is being blocked extensively. So within 7 days, you get an refund of 90% of the amount. So that helps the exporters in keeping their working capital limit under check. There is only one exception, that you should not be convicted of any offense. You should not be convicted of any offense exceeding 2.5 lakh rupees. So if you are convicted of an offense which for which the amount exceeds 2.5 lakh rupees, then the provisional refund is not available to you. Then you will have to follow the normal course, that is, you will file the refund application. He will go through the application within 60 days. The total time limit available to him is 60 days. So accordingly, he will follow the process. The another important aspect is that the refund has to be filed, or the refund has to be granted within 60 days. Refund has to be granted within 60 days, and those 60 days have to be counted from the date of filing of refund application, not acknowledgement. So my application, once it is complete, acknowledgement is issued, but the time limit is calculated from the date of filing of the refund application. And when it is deemed that the refund is actually received, when the amount is credited to my bank account. So if the amount is credited on the 70th day or the 80th day or the 100th day, then for that additional 10 days, 15 days, 30 days, whatever the case may be, you are eligible to claim the refund or interest. And the interest rate is at the rate of 6% in the normal course. And if the refund was arising out of an order of an appellate level or a tribunal level or any other order, then the interest rate will be 9%. So in simple, what I'm trying to say is that if the amount is not received in my bank account within 60 days, if I do not receive the amount, then I am eligible for interest. Interest, there are two rates, 6% normal cases, 9% where the refund is on account of any judgment in my favor. So 6% or 9%. Again, sir, the major issue is that these refunds are not granted automatically. Rather, these interest amounts are not granted automatically. So wherever there is a substantial amount, you should again file a refund application under the options others and claim only the refund amount on the basis of calculation you will submit with that refund application. I am saying that your refund was granted on say 90th day. The amount was 1 crore rupees, and that 30 days interest is to be received by you. So there will be a decent amount for 30 days if the amount is 1 crore rupees. So you will have to file again a refund application in the option others, and in that others you will file the interest amount to be received back by you. So as of now, what we have discussed is that I can file the refund application within 15 days the department. I am bringing the slide so that I can conclude it. Just give me a second. So I filed my refund application. Within 15 days, either he will issue RFD 03 DM or he will issue RFD 02. Then in some cases, there can be a provisional refund which has to be issued within 7 days of RFD 02 when the acknowledgement is issued. Within 60 days, my RFD 01 has to be issued. That is the final, my refund has to be disposed of. In case a show cause notice is issued, then within minimum 15 days are given to me to reply against that show cause notice. And finally, within 60 days of filing of the refund application, RFD 05 or 7 should be completed. That is, the amount should be granted to me either wholly or if it is adjusted, so partly, as the case may be. So so the process is almost complete, and now I will be starting on with the illustration. So I will now request everyone to please open slide number 21 on their end, whatever WhatsApp or any other media that they are using. Slide number 21, because that is the illustration that we will be taking up. I'm just giving 1 second so that everyone can open the slides, because it is an illustration, and for illustration it will be better if we have the figures with us. I hope by now everyone has viewed the slide number 21, and I'm starting with illustration number 1. I filed a refund application for ₹100. So मैंने एक 100 रुपए की refund application file करी, and it was in relation to input tax credit. Sir, I should be given refund of my ITC. तो प्रोसेस के ऊपर अब मैं नहीं जा रहा हूँ कि उसने RFD 02 इशू किया, RFD 08 शो कॉज नोटिस इशू किया. During the process of refund application, the proper officer identified that out of the 100 rupees that you are claiming as refund, rupees 50 is on account of ineligible credit. कार का credit है, insurance of कार का credit है, staff welfare का credit है. Rupees 15 is not eligible to you. Rupees 15 is an ineligible credit. That credit per se is not eligible. And rupees 5 is on account of those items for which refund is not eligible. For example, if I am doing export of goods, I am doing export of services, then I am eligible for refund of ITC on inputs and input services. I'm not eligible for refunds of capital goods. So in this case, rupees 5 may be on account of capital goods. So there are two portions. One is there is a credit which is ineligible. That credit was never eligible. And rupees 5 is eligible credit. Rupees 5 is eligible credit, but the refund will not be granted. The refund is not to be granted. Now, what will the proper officer do? He will issue a show cause notice. He will issue a show cause notice and he will say that while going through your refund application, I have identified that you have claimed refund of rupees 15 on account of ITC for which credit was not eligible. 15 rupees was never eligible to you, and rupees 5 is not eligible to you as refund. So there are two categories. 15 is not eligible because it was never a credit. 5 is not eligible for refund. So he will issue you a show cause notice. You will submit a reply. I assume that the findings of the proper officer were absolutely correct. There was no dispute. Now what will happen is proper officer will ask you, will give you an option. Either you pay 15 rupees is wrong amount. 15 rupees is the wrong amount. Either you pay 15 rupees, either you pay 15 rupees in DRC 03 through DRC 03, and he will, what out of 100, 20 is under dispute, 80 is absolutely fine with the proper officer. For 80, he will issue the refund order. So I am not disputing on the 80 aspect. For rupees 20, there are two parts, 15 and 5. Even in that 5 amount, he is saying that for rupees 5, I will not give you refund, but I will recredit the amount to your credit ledger. That is not eligible to you as refund, but it can be kept as your credit. So I will recredit the amount to the credit ledger. And 15 is an ineligible credit. So you first pay DRC 03. You first pay DRC 03. I am creating a liability through DRC 07 in your liability register. Pay DRC 03. Once you pay DRC 03, I will pass the order of rupees 80. And if you do not pay, I will pass the order of 80 and 20. And then I will adjust rupees 15. I will adjust rupees 15 through that 80 rupees refund order. I will adjust it through the adjustment option available to me. So I'm now concluding this entire summary. I filed a refund application for rupees 100, out of which there are three categories: 80 no dispute refund order issued, 15 and 5. 5 refund is not eligible, but ITC is eligible, so he will reject the refund amount. For rupees 5, he will reject the refund amount, but recredit the amount to the credit ledger. For rupees 15, he says that you have two options. Either you pay DRC 03, you have yourself paid the amount, I will recredit the amount to the credit ledger. So it is back to you. You have paid to the government, I will give it back to you. Or you do not do anything. I will reject this 15 rupees and I will pass the order of rupees 80. But when I will proceed for payment of rupees 80, I will adjust this 15 rupees from your, I will pay only the differential amount of rupees 65. This is the simple illustration what is actually the process that is taking place. Now the issue arises, sir, I will fight on these credits. I don't want to linger on these things. I am saying that my entire rupees 20 was eligible to me. Now you have an option to file an appeal against the order. So the proper officer will not recredit the amount to you. That rupees 20 will not be recredited to your account. It will be kept as it is. You will file the refund application, appeal application. After the appeal is actually disposed of, after the appeal is actually disposed of, then according to the appeal, rupees 20 will be decided whether it is to be granted as refund or it is to be recredited subject to adjustments of the liabilities. So in simple words, what I'm trying to say is that you are eligible for recredit of the rejected amount. जो मैंने एप्लीकेशन 100 रुपए की फाइल करी, 20 रुपए वो रिजेक्ट कर रहे हैं, 20 रुपए उनको रिक्रेडिट करने हैं. दैट विल बी रिक्रेडिट ओनली इफ द अमाउंट्स आर नॉट ड्यू. अगर वो गलत थे तो आप पहले पे करोगे तब वो रिक्रेडिट करेंगे. Otherwise, they will not recredit. They will adjust it through the refund amount that has been passed. Secondly, if you are going for an appeal against the order, then also they will not recredit the rejected amount to your account. Next, slide number 22, we are taking the second illustration. The facts are almost same. The only difference is in this particular situation, a provisional refund was granted, and since the amount was 90%, so rupees 90 was granted automatically within 7 days. And my eligible refund amount was rupees 80 only. Now they have paid an excess amount of rupees 10 to me. In this particular situation, that rupees 10 which they have for rupees 20 what we have discussed will be done as it is, and the 10 rupees which have been paid in excess to me, that will be added back to the liability register, and I am required to pay that amount back to the government with interest if required. So in simple words, if provisional refund has been granted and the amount is on a higher side against what I am eligible to, then that differential amount will be added to my liability. And once added to my liability, I will liable to pay the amount back to the government. Now I would request everyone to move to slide number 25, that is scope of refund amount. So in scope of refund amount, there are actually, rather we should come to slide number 29 itself. Slide number 29. So we have discussed there are three broad categories of refund application. One is where I have actually paid the taxes. मैंने पूरे taxes की ही payment कर दिया. Second is in relation to input tax credit. And lastly, there are other amounts for which I am claiming the refund application. So either it is for the tax, or it is for the ITC, or it is for other amount. When I talk about the tax, the scope of refund will be the actual tax paid by me. The taxes actually paid by me will be eligible to me as refund. So there is no dispute. In others also, the last block, in others also, I am eligible for the precise amount which I am required to claim as refund. So it will again be the actual amount. The issue arises in the categories of input tax credits, because in this category we will have to see which credit is eligible, how much credit is eligible. So if it is in relation to zero rated supply of goods or services, that is category number 7 and category number 8. Sorry. If it is in relation to category number 7 and category number 8, then I am eligible for input tax credit of inputs and input services. I am not eligible for refund of input tax credit on account of capital goods. So if I have procured any capital goods and I am exporting goods, I am exporting services under LUT, then the refund of that capital goods is not eligible to me. That is the rider, that is the condition attached to this. Second, if I am doing inverted duty structure, my rate of output tax is less than inputs. So I receive inputs at 18%, my output is 5%. Input is higher than output, then I am eligible for refund. Here, the refund is restricted only to the credits of inputs. The refund is restricted only to the credits of inputs, and however, recently in Bombay High Court and in Gujarat High Court, the High Courts have laid down that even input services should be included while granting these refunds. Even input services should be granted. Though it is a matter now which is now pending before the Supreme Court as the department has filed the SLP. So I have marked this as red star that in this section, there is a open-ended issue whether credit of input services should be eligible or not. And in case of deemed exports, so I'm an EOU, I'm receiving a deemed export, then the amount, the invoice amount, the tax charge on the invoice is eligible to me as refund. So these are the scope of refund. The amounts actually paid as taxes are eligible, or actual amount for which I am claiming the refund for other section. And in case of input tax credits, either capital goods credit is not allowed or input services and capital goods credit both are not allowed in case of inverted duty structure. Now we will take illustrations. I would request everyone to come on slide number 30. So in slide number 30, we have input tax credit for a particular client. For inputs, the credit was 100, 150, input services 50, 50, 200, capital goods 30, 30, 200. Total credits was 180, 180, 450 and 810. The client exported goods worth rupees 4,500 and GST at the rate of 18% was applicable. So this client was exporting goods. The amount of export was 4,500 and 18% GST was payable on that particular amount. Now this person has an option, has two options: with payment of taxes, without payment of taxes. When he goes for without payment of taxes, then the only restriction is that he is not eligible for refund of ITC on capital goods. So assuming he exercises option number 1, he is moving with LUT, so he will furnish an LUT. No output is required to be paid by him. He will be eligible to claim the refund of inputs, that is total of rupees 250. CSI total 250. Input services 300. He will be eligible for a total refund of rupees 550. 250 on account of input, 300 on account of input services. He will not be eligible for refund of rupees 260 on account of capital goods. Rupees 260 will not be eligible because it is restricted in the definition itself as to what exactly the refund includes. So refund is restricted to inputs and input services. It does not include capital goods. Even this position is being challenged before various high courts, but till now, to my knowledge, none of the high courts have actually ruled in this. In case of inverted duty structure, they have ruled for input services. For capital goods, there is matters lying before the high courts, but no ruling has been announced as of now, to my understanding. But there are so many judgments, so it could be possible I have missed one of them. So in option number 1, I am eligible for 550 rupees. However, in option number 2, when I pay the taxes and claim the refund, what I will do is that I will first calculate the total tax payable. My export value is 4,500 into 18% GST. I will have to pay a total amount of 810. I am now required to pay 810 to the government. So I will create a liability of 810. I will book the credits. All the credits will be booked. Inputs, input services, capital goods. Total credits in this case are also 810. Now I will file a refund application and that 810 will be eligible to me as refund. So in this particular situation, what we saw was that I was able to get the refund of capital goods also. I was able to get the refund amount of capital goods also if I exercise the option of with payment of taxes. When I exercise the option of with payment of taxes, there is no restriction in utilizing ITC, that you cannot use the ITC of capital goods. It is very clear and the department also accept this proposition. So in your case, we have to decide whether option 1 should be exercised or option 2 should be exercised depending on the fact of the cases. It might be possible in one of the cases option 1 is beneficial because the value addition is very less. And if I exercise option number 2, I will have to pay the amount through my pocket. For example, my credit is 20 rupees. My output liability will become 200 rupees. So I first have to pay 180 rupees and then I will get the refund of 200 rupees. So there is a cash outflow of 180, which is not advisable. So on the basis of the facts of your case, you will decide whether with payment should be exercised or without payment. Now, another important thing that has to be understood at this juncture is that the Government in Finance Act 2020-21 has received, has taken a power that who can use the option of with payment of taxes, who can use the option of with payment of taxes will be notified by the government. For which category of suppliers and for which categories of supplies, both will be notified by the government. This section is not yet notified. The amendment in section 16 of IGST Act is still not been notified. But now they have a power, they have the option that they can restrict who can exercise option number 2 in this illustration. And we will see when it is notified who is given this option and who are restricted in using these options. I will now request everyone to come on to slide number 31. Almost similar illustration. The only thing is that now we have cess also. I am procuring certain inputs on which I am required to pay cess. For example, coal. So my output requires coal for say generating heat to manufacture the product. So I am procuring coal. Apart from that, there are other inputs, input services and capital goods. Again, my export value is rupees 4,500. Now, in the previous illustration, we saw that it was better for me to go with the option of with payment of taxes so that I can take the credit of capital goods. And in this illustration, now we have cess also, and that cess is charged on inputs. Now, if I exercise option number 1, that is without payment of taxes, I will be eligible for refund of inputs and input services. And now the refund amount will also include the cess amount. So in this particular situation, I will be eligible for refund of 330 rupees on account of input, which will include 150 on account of cess, 180 on account of input services. Total refund that will be eligible to me will be 330 plus 180, that is 510 rupees. And for capital goods, I am not eligible for any refund. So in case of exports without payment of taxes, I am eligible to get the refund of even the cess amount that is being charged on my inputs that I receive. However, if in the same illustration, if I exercise the option of with payment of taxes, now my output liability is only 225 because my output tax rate is 5%. I am eligible for rupees 225 only. So in this particular situation, if I exercise the option of with payment of taxes, I am only getting refund of 225. And if I exercise the option without payment of taxes, I was getting the refund of 510. So again, there is no thumb rule whether with payment or without payment. It is depending on the facts of the situation. You can even have an interplay for 1 month with payment of taxes, another one without payment of taxes. It is absolutely allowed in the GST law. There is no restriction that after filing LUT with payment cannot be done, and once with payment has been started, LUT can be not be done. You can do both the options with payment and without payment in single month. For example, first 5 invoices without payment, last invoice with payment. Next month, first 2 invoices with payment, last 3 invoices without payment. You can use any permutation combination depending on the facts of the situation. But you have to remember that this should not complicate the things when you are filing the refund application. The department should easily understand. That is why what we advise is that if you are taking the option of with payment of taxes, never file the refund under without payment, under LUT. Never file the refund application. Wait for the time that the refunds are granted automatically on account of with payment of taxes. Now I will request everyone to move to slide number 32, scope of refund amount, illustration number 5. In this particular illustration, we will be understanding what is the refund amount that should be eligible to me. So I am starting with the illustration. The illustration says that for a particular month for which I am required to file a refund application, my opening balance of credit ledger was 8,000 rupees. So my opening ledger was 8,000 rupees. The current month input was only rupees 2,000. The current month input was only rupees 2,000, and total output tax for the month was 1,800. Total output tax for the month was 1,800. In this case, I am assuming it is a case of inverted duty structure and I am eligible for refund amount. Sorry, it is not. Sorry. It is not that illustration. It is a different illustration. It is a case of inverted duty structure. I was required to pay 1,800. But this inverted duty structure, I am not eligible for refund of ITC. It is a particular situation wherein my input for the, I have opening balance of 8,000. My current month input is 2,000. My total input is 10,000. My output tax is 1,800. And my output tax always remain less than my input tax because it is a case where my rate of output is less than rate of input. मेरा output का rate कम है, input का ज्यादा है, but वो inverted duty structure में नहीं जा रहा है. It is not going in inverted duty structure because of restriction, because there are certain goods which have been restricted. There are certain services in which it has been restricted. So I'm not eligible for refund. So what I did was, I said my total output was 1,800. My total output was 1,800. I mistakenly, knowingly, I made a clerical error in my GSTR 3B, and instead of 1,800, I wrote 8,100. Instead of 1,800, I wrote 8,100. My liability is now 8,100. I adjusted the credits. And then I filed the refund application. Sir, I made a mistake. My output was only 1,800. I made a clerical mistake. And I reported 8,100. I have made an excess payment of 6,300. Now please grant me refund of 6,300. So whenever the input was lying, these kind of situations were coming before the department that people were creating excess liability, were filing their refund application and taking the refund in cash, which was otherwise not allowable. In this case, the refund was not allowed to him because of XYZ reason. So what he did was he increased his output liability, filed a refund application and said, please grant me the refund. The government understood this practice. And categorically said that if it is not the case of 54(3), that is, it is not in relation. The refund application is not for input tax credit. Refund application is not of input tax credit. It is in relation to excess payment of taxes, wrongful payment of taxes, or any other case. Then we will grant refund. आपने 63 की excess payment करी है, we will grant you the refund, but the refund will be granted in the manner in which the amount is paid. जितना credit से pay किया उतना credit वापसी भेज देंगे, जितना cash से pay किया उतना cash वापसी भेज देंगे. In this particular situation, Rule 86(4)(a) was inserted. Rule 86(4)(a) was inserted, which said that if you have filing a refund claim for excess payment and excess payment has been made through credit, we will recredit the amount through your credits. We will not give you this amount in cash because we have understood that you are playing with these provisions of excess payment. आप जानबूझ के liability excess की create कर रहे हो, refund application लगा रहे हो, और जो amount आपको मिलना ही नहीं चाहिए था उसको आप cash enrich करके लेके जा रहे हो. So Rule 86(4)(a) and 92(1)(a) was inserted, and the basic reason was very simple, that the government did not wanted जहां पे ITC का refund है वो तो cash देना है, because it is the liability of the government that आपका ITC accumulate हो रहा है, because it is zero rated supply or inverted duty structure, we will grant you the refund. There is no dispute in that. But in case it is excess payment of tax, आपसे गलत payment हुई है, excess payment हुई है, we understand that. So we will grant that excess payment in the manner it is being paid to us. जैसे आपने हमें दी हम वैसे ही आपको रिवर्ट कर देंगे. तो it was these amendments were brought to stop the malified intentions. Now I will request everyone to move to slide number 34, illustration number 6. Now in this situation we have to understand that what is the final amount which will be granted to me as refund. So illustration number 6, it says that credit for the month for which refund is applied is 10,000 rupees. So the total credit for the month was 10,000 rupees, for which I am applying the refund. Out of that 10,000 rupees, 8,000 is on account of zero rated supply. Out of that 10,000 rupees, 8,000 is on account of zero rated supplies, the credits in relation to zero rated supplies. The final balance at the end of the month was 6,000 rupees. So I might have utilized, out of that 10,000 rupees, I have utilized 4,000 rupees for XYZ supplies made during the particular month, domestic supplies which were made. So what will be the maximum refund amount that is eligible to me? I will not be eligible for 10,000 rupees because it is a notional figure. It includes even supplies in relation to non-zero rated supplies. 8,000 is in relation to zero rated supply. But at the end of the month, only 6,000 was lying in your ITC ledger. आपके लेजर में ही 6,000 रह गया था, तो 6,000 से ज्यादा का रिफंड कैसे दे दूं? The objective of refund provision is that your credit should not be piling up, and we should give you the cash flow back to you. So if the amount in your credit ledger is only 6,000 rupees, how can we grant 8,000? Out of that 8,000, 2,000 you have already used in your other payments for domestic supplies. So the only maximum amount that is left for refund is 6,000 rupees. In the next illustration, the first three limbs are exactly same: 10,000, 8,000, 6,000. I was filing the refund application after 3 months, 5 months, 1 year. The time limit is 2 years. When I was filing the refund application, the amount lying in my credit ledger was only 5,000 rupees. And in the month in which I made export, the amount was 6,000 rupees. Out of that 6,000 rupees, I have utilized 1,000 for my domestic supplies in the few months in which refund application was not filed. Now it is 5,000 rupees for which I am that is lying in my credit ledger. So what is the maximum amount that the government will grant me as refund? It is 5,000 rupees, because the very objective is that your cash flow should not be restricted. And if you have utilized the ITC, then there is no problem in your cash flows, and the amount lying in credit ledger will be granted to you as a refund. So the system validation as per illustration 6 and illustration 7 have been incorporated into the GST software also. And whenever we file the refund application, it automatically captures, it calculates the credits at various stages and identify what is the amount of credit that is eligible to you. And after identifying that, say, X rupees is eligible to you, it first demarks that you should claim credit of IGST. For example, my total eligible credit is for refund is 10,000 rupees. So it will say first utilize it towards IGST. First claim entire IGST amount as refund. So I send my total ledger balance in IGST, say only 2,000 rupees. So it will say 2,000 we will utilize from IGST and balance from CGST and SGST equally. And if the balance in, say, SGST is not available or CGST is not available, then in whichever ledger balance, the balance is available, that will be utilized. In simple words, what I'm trying to say is that once the refund amount is finalized, that refund amount is to be first utilized toward IGST. If the balance is sufficient, then only IGST should be given. If the balance is not sufficient, then we will move to CGST and SGST. The first step will be that C and S should be given equally. The refund should be given in the same amount. But if it is not possible because the ledger balance in, say, CGST is not there or SGST is not there, then the proportionate transfer will be made to the second balance. Obviously, the total balance will be there. Then only the system has validated the amount of rupees 10,000 as refund. If there is no ledger balance, then the refund will not be granted. It is the ledger, the balance is there, but now it is in which ledger the amount is lying and where will I will get, from which ledger I will be getting the refund, from which kitty, whether it will be central kitty of IGST, central kitty of CGST or state kitty of SGST, from where I will be getting the refunds amount. Sir, then the next part of our discussion is what are the documents that have to be submitted with the refund application. So you can go through slides number 36 to 40 odd. It contains list-wise type of refund and the documents that are to be attached to this particular refund application. So these are basically statements and undertakings that have to be attached. And many a times the query that is received by me is that, sir, where are these declarations contained? So these declarations, you can refer slide number 43. In these in slide number 43, in the GST portals, sorry, on the CBIC website, there are forms available to you, CGST forms. In that forms, all the declaration format, the draft of all the declaration format is already provided under RFD01. So I will go to cbic.gov.in. I will go to rules. I will go to forms. I will open RFD01. After, as soon as RFD01 gets completed, all the affidavits, declarations, statement format which are required to be attached with RFD01, the sample of those are available in this portal itself at the GST site itself. So you can use those affidavits, those formats to finalize your attachments. Now we will be moving on to the specific refund types. I will request everyone to please move on to slide number 46. Now I am filing a refund application for amounts lying in my electronic cash ledger. I am filing a refund application for amount lying in my cash ledger. So what could be the possible sources that the amounts are lying in my cash ledger? It is I myself have deposited the amount in cash ledger. I have myself deposited the amount in cash ledger. It was by mistake. I was required to pay 10,000 rupees. Mistakenly, I paid 10,000 rupees. So one is I myself have deposited the amount. The other two categories are when I am supplying through e-commerce platforms and they are required to collect TCS, or I am supplying the goods, I am supplying services to government bodies, government institutes, and they are deducting my TDS. So in case a TDS is being deducted or TCS is being deducted, both TDS and TCS amounts are included. Both TDS and TCS amounts are included in cash ledger. They are credited to cash ledger, and these amounts can be claimed as refund. So TDS amount, TCS amount, they form part of cash ledger and hence can be claimed as refund if you are unable to utilize that amount. So many a times we feel that whether TDS and TCS amount, which is being piling up in my case, whether it is eligible for refund or not. Yes, sir, it is eligible, and it is eligible under the option electronic cash ledger. And sir, in electronic cash ledger, the process is very simple because it is the amount that is standing in your cash ledger. It has not been utilized. You don't have to justify exports. You don't have to justify inverted duty structure. It is your cash which is lying in the government account, and so you are eligible. So this is one of the easiest application, and the only issue to discuss was what is the sources, what are the sources that the amounts could pile up in my cash ledger. And now coming on to inverted duty structure, I would request everyone to move to slide number 48. Inverted duty structure is a situation where my rate of input, tax rate of input is higher than tax rate on output supplied. Now, sir, mark the words. Here I am using the words inputs. There are three categories: inputs, input services, and capital goods. I am not using the term input service. I am not using the term capital goods. I am saying tax rates on input, tax rate on input, and tax rate on output supplies. Output supplies can be of goods, can be of service, that does not matter. So to qualify as an inverted duty structure, what is important is my tax rate on input should be higher than my output tax on supplies. If the condition is satisfied, I am eligible for refund under inverted duty structure. However, the restriction is that the refund is eligible only to the extent of credit in relation to inputs and not input services or capital goods. We will understand these examples through illustrations also. But here, what we are trying to understand is when I am said that I am doing an inverted duty structure transaction, when the rates on inputs, again, sir, it is only inputs. I don't have to consider input services. I don't have to consider capital goods. What I have to consider is whether rate on input is higher than outward supply. Then outward supplies can be of goods, can be of services. That is not under dispute. Yes, there is a negative list for which even after qualifying as an inverted duty structure, I am not eligible for refund because they have been debarred by way of notification. Now the second issue arises. I was using this mobile phone. I am a dealer of this mobile phone. The tax rate of this mobile phone was 18%. The government came out with a notification and reduced the tax rate to 12%. And because of this, there was a credit lying in my credit ledger. I filed a refund application saying that it is an inverted duty structure transaction. I filed a refund application saying it is an inverted duty structure transaction. The government said that it is not the case of inverted duty transaction. It is a case of change in tax rates. कि पहले 18 था अब 12 हो गया. It is not an inverted duty structure transaction. It is a case of change in tax rate. In many cases, it may not impact, or you will be able to utilize the amounts because in future you will be receiving the inputs at the rate of 12% only. So there will not be a pile up. But in cases where there is a pile up, that 18%, that differential of 6% is very huge and you are unable to receive back, I will advise everyone that they should file the refund application under inverted duty structure because the law is very clear. What was the tax rate on inputs? It was 18%. What is the tax rate on outward supplies? It was, say, 12%. So there is a differential. So since there is a differential, my tax rate on input is higher than outward supply. Because it was on account of change in tax rate, it will not matter. It will still qualify as an inverted duty structure. But the only problem is that it is a very small aspect because it has to be calculated on a specific period, and for that specific period only the refund will be granted. You cannot carry forward it once the slab rates are equal. For example, from 1st of January it was 12%. So only if it till December you can play this. After December it was 12%. Inputs and outputs are on the same rate. So from January onwards the application cannot be filed. Till December it was 18. Again the refund application cannot be filed. It is only in cases where the change in rate was brought in from a cutoff date, say 15th January, 16th January, from mid of the month, then only you can file a refund application. Otherwise, till December, it was 18, not inverted duty structure. January 12, again not inverted duty structure. Even though the credit is lying, but we cannot file the refund application as at no particular stage in particular return filing period, there were two tax rates. The second issue is that I produce goods using three materials, A, B, and C. I produce a final product using three material, A, B, and C. My final product is of 12%. My final product is of 12%. Input A is of 18%. Input B and input C are of 12%. In this case, some inputs are higher, some inputs are at a same rate or a lower rate. Whether it will qualify as an inverted duty structure, the government wide circular 125 has clarified, yes, even in this case, it will be qualified as an inverted duty structure. Even if one of the input is at a higher rate, it will qualify as an inverted duty structure. However, the refund amount has to be calculated in accordance with the rules, in accordance with the formula prescribed in the rules, and on the basis of that, if the refund is eligible, if amount is eligible to him as refund, the amount will be paid. Otherwise, it will not be taken into consideration. So now we have discussed two things. One is change in tax rate. If there is a change in tax rate, and if there is a change in tax rate, if it is from the first date of the month, then to my understanding, it will never qualify as an inverted duty structure. For example, 1st of January, the rate was brought down from 18 to 12. So पहले 18 था, not inverted duty structure. January 12, not inverted duty structure. But if the rate was changed with effect from 15th January, 15th December, then for that particular month, it can be said to be inverted duty structure, because in that particular month, the input was same. It was at 18%, my supplies were for 12%. So that will qualify as an inverted duty structure. This is my understanding. Second is where the department says that if you are using multiple inputs to complete an output, to give form a final output, then even if one of the inputs is at a higher rate, then also it will qualify as an inverted duty structure transaction. However, the refund will be eligible only if it is eligible through the formula prescribed in Rule 89, Sub-Rule 5. Now I request everyone to please open slide number 51. This is the amount that is, this is the formula given in Rule 89.5, which says that it is pro rata. Very simple words. If I rationalize this entire formula, it is proportionate credit available in relation to inverted duty structure. So it says that your inverted duty structure divided by total turnover into net ITC. So when I divide inverted duty structure by total turnover, it is the percentage of inverted duty structure. Out of that percentage, I am multiplying the total credit for the month. So it is the effective credit minus taxes which I am paying for inverted duty structure. That is the credits which I would have already used for the taxes, I will be using those. So in this particular situation, it is only कि पहले मैंने percentage निकाली कि मेरी inverted duty की percentage कितनी है. Then I calculated out of the total ITC, what is the ITC pertaining to inverted duty structure. So I got the ITC pertaining to inverted duty structure. जो first बड़ा bracket है, that is ITC pertaining to inverted duty structure. I am reducing the tax paid on inverted duty structure. Out of this ITC, I have already used some ITC for payment of taxes, and the balance amount will be eligible to me as refund. Let us take the illustration number 8 on the same slide, slide number 51. It says that ITC on inputs is 6,000. Total turnover is 50,000. Tax on total turnover is 2,500. What is the refund amount, assuming this entire turnover is inverted duty structure? So when I put these figures in the formula, my total turnover and adjusted total turnover are same. So that is 50,000 divided by 50,000, they will cancel out. My net ITC is ITC on input, that is 6,000 rupees. I have already utilized 2,500 for payment of output tax. So 6,000 minus 2,500, 3,500 is the maximum refund amount that is eligible to me. Let us take, please move on to slide number 52. In this slide, we see an illustration wherein there is an input A, which is charged at 5%, input B, which is charged at 18%, and out of input A and input B, I am generating output Y, which is charged at the rate of 12%. So first of all, we have to see whether it qualifies as inverted duty structure transaction or not. And the basic principle was rate of input. And when I say input, any input higher than output. In this case, my output is at 12%. So is there any input which is at a rate higher than 12%? Yes, sir. Input B is at a rate higher than 12%. So this is a case of inverted duty structure transaction. Now let us take the illustration. Input A, total purchase value was 500. Input was 25. Input B, purchase value was 2,000. Input amount was, ITC amount was 360. Output was 3,000 rupees and tax on that was 360 rupees. In this particular situation, again assuming that my entire turnover was for inverted duty structure. So 3,000 turnover was for entire 3000 is the total turnover, and it is for inverted duty structure. So inverted duty structure divided by total turnover, 3000 divided by 3000 cancels out into net ITC. Total ITC in this case is 360 plus 25, 385. 385 minus what I have already paid, 360, but I have already utilized for payment of taxes, 360. So the maximum refund amount eligible to me will be only rupees 25. So I will be eligible for only rupees 25 in this case, and that is the maximum amount that is available also in this particular situation. There are certain other illustrations also that I have given. So I am not going to all those illustrations, but I will request everyone to please move on to slide number 54. Slide number 54 is a case where I have brought one of the loophole of this entire formula, rule 1895, the formula that we have discussed. In this particular situation, my input is at 5%, input A is at the rate of 5%, input B is at the rate of 18%, output is at the rate of 12%. My total ITC for the month is 385. However, in this particular month, my sales were very less. Certainly, it means that there will be some amount that is lying in my closing stock. But when I apply the formula, I get that my refund amount should be 265 rupees. My refund amount should be 265 rupees. And how it is being calculated? Total turnover to offset हो गई, output net ITC 385, 360 plus 25 minus tax paid 120, effectively 265. 265, whether I'm eligible to get refund of stock of amounts or goods lying in my stock as per formula, yes. But now we have seen the officer understanding this point, and they are raising the conflict whether you should be eligible for ITC which is lying in the stock which has not been used for inverted duty structure. It could be possible that in the future date the rate of 12% is increased to 18%, or you supply the raw material input B at as it is without manufacturing output Y. How can we give you the refund, the entire refund amount upfront, even for those which are not yet been consumed, which have not yet been supplied? So this is an open-ended issue. The department has now started questioning whether you should be eligible for refund on closing stock at the end of the particular refund period or not. And to my understanding, this position of the department is very much correct. In one of the cases, we didn't even issue the certificate which was required under the law. It was for export of goods, and he said that the stock is lying with you, you have not exported. How can I say that this ITC is in relation to export of goods? So they brought 89.4 before us. We had an argument. Eventually we said that even if the law says it, my logic is very much clear that ITC for zero rated supplies is eligible. Once you supply it, once you use it for zero rated supply, it will qualify as refund. Once it is not used, I will not do. Just because the definition of net ITC is for a particular credit for the particular month, I will not get into the integrity. So this is very much, this is my understanding. We have difference of opinion. The formula is the other way around. So let's see how the things will develop in future. Similarly, we have a formula given for export of goods and export of services. I will now request everyone to please move on to slide number 57. In slide number 57, again, we have a similar amount. We have a similar formula rather, in which I am eligible to get the refund amount. The only thing is that is missing over here is that there is no subtraction of tax already paid, because here I am filing a refund application of supplies without payment of taxes, exports without payment of taxes. There was never an output liability. Since there was never an output liability, it is simple proportion. Zero rated turnover divided by total turnover into net ITC. That is the net amount that is eligible to you as refund. However, there is one important change that was brought into with effect from March 2020, and it restricted that the turnover of zero rated supply should be maximum 1.5 times of the domestically supplied goods. For example, I export these mobile phones. My export value is 200 rupees. My export value is 200 rupees. But I supply these mobile phones domestically at a price of rupees 100. Then the law says that the maximum amount that will be calculated for refund purposes will not be on the basis of 200, but it will be on the basis of domestic supply into 1.5 times. 100 into 1.5, that is 150 rupees. So my refund calculation will be done on the basis of 150 and not 200. Now the issue arises why the department has restricted, capped the refund amount in these particular situations. Again, sir, it is in relation to malpractices that were being done. However, the government had taken various corrective actions for this. The first thing was, for exports, to qualify as an export, the only condition was it should cross the custom frontiers of India. It should the goods should move from India to a place outside India. So what I used to do, I knew the actual amount that I will be receiving from the customer is 150 only. Actual amount that I will be receiving is 150 only. But to gain extra amount as refund or quick refund amount, I increase the value as 200 rupees. फॉर्मूले में 200 डाला, रिफंड आ गया, पार्टी ने तो 150 ही देने थे, एंड आई वाज हैप्पी विद 150. So that 50 rupees, I issued a credit note after 3 days, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, whatever the case may be, and I adjusted without payment of taxes. Even at the time of issuance of credit note, nothing had to be done. But I got a speedy refund. I got a refund on the higher amount. Or there were cases wherein the government even identified that the people were exporting product X. Exporting product X, and while filing the shipping bill, they wrote it as product B, especially in the cases of agarbattis and cigarettes. Agarbattis and cigarettes के cases के अंदर agarbattis were being supplied as cigarettes just because they wanted to claim additional amounts as refund. They were taking cess also as refund. So there were many malpractices that were being taking place. So the government, what they did is they first capped that 1.5 times of the domestic turnover, and secondly, they have also mandated that it is mandatory for you to get the entire amount, entire export proceeds also to qualify as an export. Earlier the amendment was brought in rules. पहले rules के अंदर लेके आए थे. Again, when it was brought into rules, we used to say that there is no backup from the act. The act is not supporting the rules. There is no condition for export of goods that the foreign currency should be brought in. For example, in case of services, it is categorically written that you should receive foreign currency. For goods, there is no specific mention. Act is not saying that we have to get the foreign currency. Merely writing in the rules will not substantiate. But in Finance Act 2021, even this provision is being amended and brought into the act, that in case of export of goods, you will have to bring the entire sale proceed amount, and if the amount is not brought in, then you will have to pay back the refund amount if already received. So to counter the malpractices, two things have been done. One is the capping of the turnover. Second is the bringing of the foreign currency in cases of export of goods. Yes, even I understand that there are only 5% of the cases wherein these malpractices were being done, and 95% of the cases these malpractices were not being done, and the capping of 1.5 times may impact this. But the government should also understand that every time you cannot make a law, you cannot make a procedure for the black sheep of the industry. You will have to make the law for the 95% of the people, 98% of the people who are complying with the provision. And for those 10%, 5%, 2%, you will have to develop other mechanisms. You cannot just make the law very rigid. Yes, you have a justified explanation, but having a justified explanation and asking the 95% dealers who are now being impacted to follow it is a big question mark on the policy of the government. Now I will request everyone to please move on to slide number 61. I'm skipping some slides because these are issues which I have already discussed during the deliberation, so I don't want to waste the time rediscussing those issues. Slide number 62. I exported goods with payment of taxes. My shipping bill becomes the refund application. I don't have to file separate refund application. So in various cases, I see that my refund is not being granted, and there could be certain errors. So government has identified 6 different errors and given a solution and how to handle those situations if those errors are persisting. For example, if the error code is SB001, on slide number 62, error code 6B SB001, it means that there is a mismatch in shipping bill detail. That is, actual shipping bill number is 10, and while filing GSTR1, you have written 101 or you have written 9. So there is a mismatch in shipping bill details. So you will have to rectify your GSTR1, and once you rectify your GSTR1, it will again match with the IceGate data, and after matching, the refund will be processed. Similarly, there is an error code SB002. It means that EGM has not been filed. There is an export general manifest that has to be filed by the shipping line or the airline carrier. The transport system which is taking goods from India to a place outside India, that transport system has to file an export general manifest. If that is not filed, then also the refund will not be processed, it will not be granted. Similarly, we have SB004 to SB003, 4, 5, and 6. Again, I am not going into these details. The explanation provided in the presentation are, I think, self-explanatory and will help in the closure of the relevant details. The only thing that is important is that these error codes are available at GST portal login itself. Once I log in at the portal, then there is an option for status of my shipping bills. So I can refer to that status and I can see the error code. And after identify the error code, I can proceed. I can process the error according to the solutions provided by the government. And after providing solution, I can complete the my refund should be processed automatically. Now, there are certain other things also in this slide, but they are of very less use. So, and since I'm not able to share these slides, I think it will be better if we take the queries so that in case we have anything left or anything which has to be deliberated for a specific person, we can take those. I will request if we can start with the queries. Thank you everyone for the patient hearing. And I'm very sorry that we could not share the slides because the impact of this session goes very down.
Thank you very much, Tarun sir. It was really a delight to hear you on the entire GST refund process. Sir, as of now, there is one query which I will read for you. One of the members is asking, sir, what is the Mumbai High Court landmark judgment relating to refund due to refund of unutilized input tax paid on input services? I referred Gujarat High Court landmark judgment, VKC Footsteps India Private Limited, and applied refund application, but it is rejected. Refund is not as per GST rules. What is the expected time of Supreme Court?
None of the I've understood the query. Sir, none of the GST authorities are accepting the High Court judgment of whether it is of Maharashtra or of the Gujarat. They are rejecting because the law is very clear. Now, I will discuss this aspect on the basis of my understanding. There are two things. One is my logic, my understanding, my expectation of the law. And the second thing is what is the law. When we talk about what is the law, it is very clear that the input should not, the credit of only input should be available. Now, the plea before the High Court is majorly that this is an absurd reading. And even there are two readings, two interpretations. In one of the interpretations, even all the inputs of input services and capital goods both are eligible. And in one of the readings, only in ITC of inputs is eligible. So the department is taking the conservative approach and giving credits of only inputs. The high courts have held that it can be both. It can be inputs and input services both. And what the Supreme Court will rule, I cannot comment on that. But the law as of now is in favor to the department. However, if the Supreme Court says that just because you have restricted the credit on the basis of a line, the entire GST mechanism is not running according to the desire of the, for example, Safari Retreat judgment, in which they even allowed the credit of works contract. कि अगर आप मॉल बना रहे हो तो आपको सारा क्रेडिट मिल जाएगा. So many a times the courts go beyond the law, they lay down the law. That is why we say that they are the law laying authorities. They can lay the law, they can interpret the law in the benefit of the taxpayer. So what they will interpret, I am not too sure. But at the ground level, none of the authorities are accepting the high court judgments.
Okay. Sir, there is one more query where a member is asking, can I amend the GSTR1 invoices if shipping bill details are not originally put in GSTR1 for financial year 17-18 and 18-19?
So there was a window that was open in up till March 2021 also. So now that window has again closed, so it will be very difficult, but you can definitely try if it can take. Because many a times we have seen that in many cases, the portal allows some of the data to be feeded in. So you can try if it is allowing you, but if it is not allowing, the only option available to you is to visit the custom authorities, which from where you have filed the, from where you have exported the goods, and then ask that this is the particular situation and how to resolve it. Again, it will be a very time consuming task, so you will have to fight back with the custom authorities. They will send you to the GST, your jurisdictional office. You will have to refer to the jurisdictional office. I will lay down in 3 steps. First, try it on the basis of your portal itself, whether it is taking or not. If it is taking, that is the best case scenario. If you are unable to process it through the portal, then you will have to go to the custom authority from where you have exported the goods or service. From they exported the goods. They will ask you to go back to the jurisdictional office, which is not correct. You will have to get the refund because they are the authorities which will have to now process the refund. So you will have to stick back. You can write a letter to the jurisdictional office. Again, they will say that this is not available to us. So you will have to between custom and jurisdictional office. But finally, the refund will be granted through the approval of customs authorities only.
Okay.
A very time-consuming task we have seen in 2 of the cases. So it will take time. It is not an easy task.
Thank you, sir. I think the queries are over. So thank you very much, Tarun sir, for really taking us through the entire GST refund process in a very detailed manner, starting right from the 13 different types of refunds that we can claim, the forms that we need to file, the entire GST refund process. It was really explained and rather it was explained in such a manner that a person who is not practicing in GST1, he would be aware of what is now the process and what forms he should be using to claim the refunds, the timelines for claiming those refunds, getting the acknowledgements and other things, the various areas of or rather various formulas using which we can calculate the refund amount, the inverted duty structures and other processes as well. So I, on behalf of Sarasbag Study Circle, thank you very much for sparing your time and guiding our members on the GST refund process. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you, Tarun sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
So members, the PPT is already posted on the group. I will also email it to all of you, and the video will be uploaded on our YouTube portal. Thank you very much.